The track really has not changed all that much, and nor has the intensity, which is kind of interesting because last several images on satellite, you definitely see that flare up of thunderstorm activity right at the center of circulation. You also see that fanning out of the higher thin cirrus clouds, which means the storms are intensifying. And when we colorize satellite, boy, you really see that concentration of the strongest storms right at the center, which would lead me to think that we may see a bit more intensification. Perhaps not rapid intensification, not that there is necessarily a definition of rapid intensification, but I would put money on the possibility, or maybe even the high likelihood of this becoming a Category 2 storm as it moves over the northern islands, eventually making its way towards South Florida. Again, whether or not it actually makes landfall is still yet to be seen for exactly when it makes that more northward turn. However, they're going to see some strong winds and high rainfall on the even western side of the storm, especially if the center gets this close to the Florida coast. However, the worst part of the storm, the eastern side, will still be out over open water. Good news is this should be a weakening system as it moves toward the Carolinas, but still pretty powerful. With it 70 miles an hour, it could easily still be a hurricane once it does move toward the Carolinas. The big question is going to be how much interaction with land it has. We also have Tropical Depression 10, which we'll talk a little bit more about, which is off the west coast of Africa, so not going to be doing much.